Two, one.
Hello. I am sorry, but I must interrupt this show. Leonard, you know what it is. Hey, Ham Solo. It's time, baby. Low. It's turn out we do. Huh. Hey. They said we said we in. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said we go. We say that you heard right. 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 They said we said we in. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said we go. We say that you heard right. 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 Man, I swear that it's imminent. I've been going so hard on my penmanship. About to go in and buy me a wheel. And I pull that shit fresh off the dealership. I can leave you on red like an Xbox. Got me laughing at you like you red fox. Got you chasing Hot Wheels like a matchbox. EA running the game and it don't stop. Super close like I'm playing for Blizzard. Cut you all in my sights like Red Dead Redemption. Never gonna slip on my pimpin'. Better get out my way, bitch, I'm on a mission. Really ain't no competition. I'm steady grilling opposition. I'm get up and ready to win. They can play it how they play, but fuck what you say. I'm getting this money today. Last of us like a dying breed. Down the ride like a noble steed. Fatality moves, I make it bleed. That's on any game, that's on any screen. Shut up and give me your money. They said we so lit. Even if I take an L, we coming back just to show that we don't quit. They said we in. They said we on. They said we strong. They said we go.
Oh my goodness. Welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Behind Them Six with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming here with you on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. And as you can see, I'm again not at home still yet, but I will be by Monday. I know for sure I will be by Monday, but tomorrow, another show, not home. It's gonna happen. Deal with it. Know the mic quality is a little different than it usually is. The camera quality is a little different. It's not as extravagant behind me. You know why you're here. I'm happy you're here. Let's go on ahead and get into this. Today I have this awesome guest that I've been trying to get on here, I swear, since like I want to say the summer.
Sometime in September or August, I believe. I'd have to go scroll up through our history of chat.
Yeah, but regardless, we got some history now. We have something to talk about if we want to. But today we're gonna keep it gaming here on here, and I'm really happy to finally bring Mr. Ginger Prime, brother. What is happening with you? Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to interview you here today on my channel.
Dude, I'm honored. Thanks so much for inviting me onto the show, and I'm glad that this actually worked out. It was, it's a game of, like it's the scheduling game behind the podcasts is one of the key elements of the amount of work that goes into it. Because like I had originally, because you had asked about the 28th for tonight, and then I asked my wife, and she's like, "Oh, you got to go do this other thing." And then it's like, okay. And then she's like, "Oh, that other thing canceled." I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna see if he's available still." And thankfully, you were. So I was like, "Yeah, let's go." Because I'm off all this week. This is my first actual, real, true holiday in a long time. Because we had a baby this year, and so I was saving all of my vacation time so that I could help my wife out with a baby. And so I was like, all right, that was the summer. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to save up. So from Christmas to New Year's, I'm just hanging out. So I was like, it's been nice.
So I just wanted to go on ahead and just kind of set the par for the course for today, just in case our viewers are curious how I'm running this today. Once again, off the Steam Deck. So bear with me, folks. If there's any kind of slowdown or whatnot, just let me know. But I think everything's been running fairly smooth so far. So let's go on ahead and keep pushing right now. So as for why I have you here, I mean, everybody that checks out the show knows already, but I wanted to talk about your history, man, and how you got to where you are with your channel, what made you a gamer, what makes you want to do stand-up comedy, because I watched a couple of skits that you put out there and I thought they were hilarious.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Some people think they're a little wild, but I think they're awesome. I think it's fun. I like it when a person's willing to go there with certain stuff. So,
like people ask me like what my demo is, and it's like whenever you put me in a room with like black parents, like I run the show, because it's just like I don't know what it is, but it's like just growing up with like in that culture, not being a part of it, but just being somebody who was always just surrounded by it. It's just is so much fun for me. And so all the other comedians that I know, whenever they're like, dude, you got to come to this room, they invite me in, and it's a lot of fun because like clearly, like my complexion is blinding.
Yeah, well, you have no problem throwing it out. And I was like, man, I see some of the comments in your in the Twitter post that you had like 5 or 6 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was phenomenal, but like some of the people didn't love it.
That's the thing
And
that's
that's
interesting about the internet, though, right? Because I was
yeah.
very hesitant because, like, in real life, like really try not to offend people. Like, it's there. I have a little. I like was having all this anxiety, and so I was like, but then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do comedy. I'm gonna lean into this discomfort that I have, and I'm just gonna go and just write, whatever the most ridiculous stuff is. And then the goal from the comedy perspective is like I'm always just making fun of me, in that respect. So like I know one of the ones that like somebody was really pissed off at me for, like that the ending of the joke is I'm just I'm gentrification into all these different societies, which is a real problem when you think about it in some communities. But I don't know, I always just, and that one does really well because now the best thing about it is like I gotta go and I gotta open up that joke with, y'all want to hear my most racist joke? And then the crowd just absolutely goes nuts. It was like they tried to cancel me for this one. Let's go. But yeah, I think whenever you're trying to be canceled for being a stand-up comic, that it ends up being, that's kind of, I don't know, kind of the best marketing, as weird as that sounds. You're
That
like,
sounds terrible.
it's like, because like comedians, it's like people look at it and it's like he's playing a character, he's telling a joke. And my whole point was like, I agree, like I shouldn't walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm just going to tell you a joke. You don't even know that I do comedy. It's like that. Yeah. It's a joke. I don't think is a worthwhile an excuse. However, in all of those clips, like I'm in a comedy club, clearly. And for me, I always say the only review that actually matters is the laughs that I get in the room. If I'm not getting laughs, then I need to go back to the writing wheel and figure out like, okay, well, how do I make that work? So it's been good. It's been very healthy for me. A lot of people also thought that was weird. They're like, why is he talking about comedy as a form of therapy? I was like, go talk to any comic. It is therapy for a bunch of us.
That's wild. But so, and shout out to Talos, Ari in the chat saying hello, Ham Solo, Ginger Prime, and chat. Merry Christmas to everyone. Yes, Merry Christmas and upcoming Happy New Year to everybody that comes through and checks us out. And I just don't so happen to see come back until maybe next year, however that works out or whatnot. But
Yeah.
as for you're talking about your comedy. We're going to be talking about the gaming aspect. So I want to go on ahead and hop right into that. So I want to go way before you had the name, Ginger Prime, or
Yeah.
you really even have like a direction really in life. Let's go back to when you were a kid.
Okay.
Straight up. And I asked you what was the first console that you had.
Yeah.
You told me straight
Nintendo.
up the Nintendo. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
You told me Nintendo. So I'm actually kind of curious. Was that a magical moment for you having that Nintendo,
Yeah.
or was it like maybe a console a little bit later? Because usually, sometimes appetizer is nice,
Yeah.
but the main course ends up coming, after that appetizer. After you really acknowledge, oh man, this place seems pretty good, and then you're like, oh, but the next platter is nuts.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
So it's a little bit of both because the first game I ever played was Super Mario Brothers 2. And when I got my Nintendo, it came with Mario and Duck Hunt. And I was just head over heels with it. But I still to this day remember when I learned about the Super Nintendo. We were in this van with a bunch of people from from my Cub Scout group. And one of the kids was talking about how there's a new Nintendo that's coming, and that's when it was like dude, like that was such a pivotal moment going from the NES to the SNES, especially as I was growing up during that time. So I ended up like learning about the Super Nintendo. Like, yeah, I was big in Nintendo. Like in fact, it's kind of like to the great shame, but it's always kind of funny when I see fanboyism. It's like I was a die-hard Nintendo fanboy. Like Halo was out, and I was convinced that other game oh, we got Luigi's Mansion, man. Like I don't know what this Halo game is,
No,
so
I
I was
see what
like
you're saying.
die-hard Nintendo fanboy for so long. Thankfully, I came out of that mindset, but I still always feel that pull to Nintendo. And it's funny because I'm always complaining about Nintendo and all the crap. And it's like, come on, guys, like get your stuff together and really truly like do all these cool, like these things that we want. And then they don't, but then I still give them money. So it's like I'm sending them mixed messages. They're like, well, this guy clearly keeps giving us money. I guess we're gonna keep doing the things that give us money. But yeah, it was that period, because I remember I was also like I was mowing all these yards and stuff, saving up money. And so I bought the Super Nintendo with my own money, with my own hard work, and getting that with Super Mario World. Like that is such a great moment. And I love revisiting that game.
Gotcha. All right. So the big shot from the beginning was the Nintendo, the
Yeah.
NES, you said Super Mario 2 was a
Yeah.
big
That was the
deal.
first one I saw. I didn't own that
That's the
one
first one you
because
saw, but you said
my parents, yeah.
you got the gun, God dang it, why am I slipping right off of that?
You're good.
The Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. Golly,
Yeah.
I don't know why I was slipping so hard just to think that. I don't know how many times I've owned that game, but anyways, so you got into that, but you said throughout the time, obviously Nintendo kind of kept you around. I mean, obviously that's a big chunk of time, though. If you're talking about between the NES all the way up until, and you're saying, screw Halo, get up out of here. I'm playing Luigi's Mansion. That's like 15 years.
Yeah. And like I don't think I got the Nintendo because obviously the first game I ever saw was Super Mario Brothers 2. So my parents got the bundle with Super Mario, etc. So it's like the Nintendo I think had been out for a while, but I wasn't aware of it until I think I was maybe 7 or 8 when I first played a video game and I first saw a video game. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, I guess maybe outside the arcade or something like that, where we'd go to a pizza place or something, and there was some kind of game, but I had never seen anything like that at home. And I it's just absolutely, it's incredible, because I remember my parents being worried. A lot of parents back then also were worried, like kids are just playing video games, what are they gonna do, like are they gonna work? And then it's like now you're like, look at Ninja signs the $30 million contract for, and he's it's like like none of that industry existed, but there was this fear. And for me, it actually drove me into my career. So I'm a software engineer. And I actually studied game development and design. But it was Halo 2, that the documentary where they locked everybody away for 10 months. They're like, hey, and here's this party, all the families. And then everybody just went inside the building for the next 10 months to finish Halo 2. And I was like, I don't know any woman who's going to want to have kids with me that's going to be like, oh yeah, this is the time. Is he off to war? Is he in the service? Nope. he's making a video game in a building down over there. Like, oh man, while the kids are just like, driving her crazy or something like that. So I shifted over into business and application development there, which has been actually really quite nice, because when I've hired a couple of people out of Gearbox, because they're they don't pay that well. Like business apps pay way better than game developers. And that's where like I stand up a lot for game devs, because like when I see a lot of like angry gamers just pissed off at like these devs suck, etc. It's like, no, I think I'm gonna probably say it's the publisher, but those devs are working because they love making games. They love video games, and they're working for less money. Like it's like, you guys, oh man, I wish I could put everybody I would see complain about games and just the devs. I was like, I wish I could just put you into that 2 to 3 year project. It would change your entire view of video games. And the view ends up being, for me, is like, I think they're a miracle of our time. That the reality is that so many things can go wrong, especially on these big AAA games. It's mind blowing that they actually exist. That especially with the shift of mobile gaming, that we haven't seen all these companies go like, wait, what do you mean? I could spend 1/100th of the cost and get 50x the profit of these AAA games. So the only reason I feel like they exist is because people want them to, and yes, they're, you want them to be profitable, but I think well, if it was just about profit, you would just see probably everybody just go mobile, and that would suck for all of us.
Gotcha. And so you brought up just a moment ago, like, how you kind of got into the industry
Mhm.
and a little bit of stuff like that. So I want to go back to like right before you kind of found your niche into where you wanted to go. What were some of the ideas in your mind on where you wanted to drive your life? When did you hit like the proverbial fork in the road where you're like, I'm either gonna go this way or I'm gonna go that way?
Hmm. That's a really good question. It's difficult to answer because there have been many forks in life. I think the hardest time for me was a young man, like 23 to 25, because I just felt rudderless. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But my whole life, like especially when finding video games, I wanted to learn how to make them, and so that was kind of a big driving force. I wanted to study, computers, and so I was constantly in that aspect. I also did sports, and had actually played college baseball in a scholarship. And then it was like, I think for me was nice in a way, is like I blew up my shoulder, so it was like, yep, not gonna go any further. This is kind of the ending of that. So that was like kind of that decision of like, cool, like, yeah, I'm glad I've been studying programming and computer science this whole time, because that's something I really wanted, and then continued my studies after my main bachelor's. But yeah, I can't, it's hard to say, because it's like I always kind of knew I wanted to be in software development, and it felt like that was something that was really hard for me to get into initially, because everybody was just trying to push me into hardware. I was like, nah, man, like I want to study I want to do the programming. I want to write the apps. I want to I want to make games. And I've done a little bit of that now as a hobbyist. And one of the things we're actually kicking up this year, we've just entered in pre-production, but I'm working with the studio, and we're working on making a game. We're going to launch it on PC first on Steam, and then if I'm able to recoup the costs and make a little bit of money, then I'd like to like launch it on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and Switch or something like that, because that'd be really cool.
No doubt. And here's something that I think needs to be shared more. And I'm going to ask you this question because I think this is very important. Because as a young person, when I think of myself back when I was young, I mean, I think a lot of people do think of, the idea of getting into video games or like going like just trying to get into that industry, but seeing kind of a wall that doesn't really say door here. You see what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of tell me how you, at the beginning, kind of navigated your way into being like, this will take me to that. This will take me to being able to be in the same room as people developing these titles that I admire.
Thinking.
I thought it froze. I was like, oh crap, what
No,
happened?
no, I'm sorry. I just like
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I'm just paranoid.
titles that like, man, I ended up like gravitating towards RPGs mainly because like my friend's older brother really like Dragon Warrior, but we got Dragon Warrior, which is Dragon Quest, as a part of the Nintendo Power subscription campaign. So they were like, "Hey, subscribe to Nintendo Power, and they'll send you a free Nintendo game." And so I got hooked into the RPGs, and I've always really liked the fantasy element, and so that was something that really kind of like really changed gaming for me, because obviously before that, like, you have Mario, you have a little different actions and stuff like that. And but Dragon Warrior was really kind of this like became this love of the RPG. And then because it was interesting, because I went and tried Final Fantasy 1. I did not like it at all. Like I just
Okay.
didn't. It took me years until they remade it like on Game Boy before I actually played through the whole thing and finished it. And there was that I was like, oh, I really don't like this. I like Dragon Warrior. But then with Final Fantasy 2, which was, I guess technically 4, that came out, and then that was just it. That just captured that imagination, and so there
They
was.
like pretty much like reinvent the game for
Well,
2.
they always kind of do that with each Final Fantasy iteration, and that's a blessing and a curse. I think one of the things they're really struggling with right now is that you have so many different generations of Final Fantasy, like
Yeah, over
no one's
adapting.
gonna be happy. Yeah, because like the latest one, I was like, yeah, this is great. This is I love RPGs, and somebody was like, it's not an RPG, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then I went and played Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3 this year, and then even Harry Potter, and it was like, oh yeah, this is an action game. And it was like, yeah, Final Fantasy can be an action game, but it's definitely not like what I would really kind of classify as a true RPG anymore.
Sure. But yeah, let's go back to what you were
Yeah,
talking
I think I
about.
might have
Okay.
missed your question.
No. So like I was asking you how you like kind of found the road for yourself to get from point A to point B in becoming in gaming. Like get like not as a player per
Mhm.
se, more as like I think I want to get into the software stuff. And this, if I get this class taken care of, that will lead me into the actual class that I need, because all these prerequisite kind of things
Yeah.
that happen throughout school. Was there any kind of like road that you took that you're like, this makes sense and this will get me to work on said game, or to be able to be comfortable in my own skin to then work on something all on my own?
Man, not necessarily, because especially at the university level, like the code that we studied like isn't in use at all anymore, in that regards, just because of how technology moves. It's more about
Mm,
learning the syntax. So all of it, like from a university perspective, because I talked to a lot of guys like, oh, I want to get into programming. Oh, do I need to go to a 4-year university? And I was like, you need to think of programming as like a trade. Like it's it's a plumber, or it's a electrician. Those are good trades. They do well. Programming is a trade. Now, if you go to universities, then there's some extra things there. Like the goal of the university, in my mind, is to teach you how to think, so that way you can kind of figure yourself through it. And thankfully, I've always been a self-starter, but always just somebody who's personally just driven and motivated. So I get an idea in my head, and then I just follow it through. In fact, that's the highest praise that people always give me, is like they're like, yeah, when he sets his mind on something, like I don't have any doubt that he won't accomplish his goal. Like it's just, sometimes you run into bumps in the road, and you got to be like, okay, we gotta go horizontal for a little bit before we go back to vertical. But yeah, I can't say it as just kind of one defining moment. It was just something that I knew that I wanted to do from an early age. Once I first started playing video games, you could track it back down to Mario. Like I wanted to learn how to play those video games.
no doubt, no doubt. Okay. So going from, hitting college,
Mhm.
and stuff like that, and learning, you know, the trade and how to do some of the stuff, although, or actually something I want to go on to before I even hit that question is, what is it like learning all of this stuff? Like you just said, like, yo, we have learned this whole code that doesn't even work anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
What's it like just having to think about, man, I have to adapt. It's like adapt or die, or
I mean,
adapt or
that's
fall off the
it.
wagon, or
It's the
something like
same
that.
thing with YouTube. I remember when everybody was complaining about, oh, shorts, they're gonna, it's like, okay, it's like, guys, like, it's adapt or die. Like the platform doesn't care. It's like if you like doing this, this is something you need to consider. If you don't like doing this, like good luck. And that's just them the breaks, in that regards. But yeah, same thing with programming. That's the thing I like about it. It's always there's a learning element to it. Every day I can get better. Every day I can learn a new approach. I can, see what the latest technology is bringing, and that helps improve all these different, aspects of writing these APIs and, the front end components. And so it's never dull. Like, and that's one of the things, like, I always kind of like when I mentor, especially younger men who are like coming up in the industry or just in any industry, and they're just asking me for kind of my help. It's like, you're getting paid twice at every job. You're getting paid an experience, and you're getting paid an actual salary. Now, as you get that experience up, that salary should go, but that also means that you might be learning less and less. And that means that that job might be feeling a little bit more of a grind, less satisfying, because when you're learning something and there's an excitement to it. And then what you want to see is that, like, as the learning decreases, you either fulfill that some other way, but your salary should be going up to compensate.
You got to do something with that void now, right? Like, it's like, okay, I can do this without thinking. What can I now add to it so I can continue thinking while still managing this stuff that I can do,
and then improving yourself, and then and improving your career aspirations. I think one of the things that's made me very passionate in kind of a subtext of my content is like, I see a lot of suffering out there. I see a lot, like, so for example, credit card companies spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to keep people in debt. And I meet so many people that are like, oh, I got a credit card, I pay off the balance. Yeah. But there's over $1 trillion of carried balance. So 1 out of 1,000 people can manage a credit card, but yet 999 think that they're the exception. And what happens, and I've seen it happen in my family, thankfully, me and my wife, we got out of that trap, because that's what it is. But I've seen, people like, yeah, you can handle the payments, and then until you lose that job, and then all of a sudden you're constantly behind the 8 ball, and then they're coming to take the car. It's like, so it's one of the things that's just like, and then the reality comes down into it. Like, how do you make more money? Like, how can you in your career get paid more? It's weird, but if you don't owe anybody any money, you're going to make way more money, because you're going to end up, your balls are just going to be a little bit bigger, and you're going to be like, I am worth more money, and I don't need you to make sure that I'm managing these payments. So that's just something that comes in as a subtext of like, I love talking to video games. How can people, like, actually afford these? And so I get, kind of always try to like remind people, like, what, you get one shot at this life, be who you want to be. And a part of that is we gotta start erasing these, these messages, these lies that we've been bought and sold our whole life. Right. So that's just, I have no idea if that answers the question at all, but it's just, it's something that I'm passionate about.
No, it absolutely does. And that kind of brings up, like, because you're like, okay, so I get into this because of the sheer will. The sheer, I kind of committed to this, and I see the, need to grow in this dimension and this dimension, and I'm willing to do all that and continue to learn more to become better. Now I got to ask you, how does one that has like a very small portfolio coming out of college then market yourself as, a person that creates or designs or codes or something like that, to then get like some sort of entry level job to some of these development companies?
So there's a couple of ways that you have to go, and this is just the reality. First and foremost, don't sit around on your hands not doing anything. The people who went to the next round whenever I was a hiring manager were people who are like, yeah, I'm not employed right now, but I'm working on a website for this guy, and let me show it to you. Or I'm doing this, this other thing, and I'm building this own thing in my, my free time when I'm not looking for work. It's like, versus somebody who's like, I'm just kind of watching Netflix. It's like, okay, like self-starting, especially in this
tell you that they're just hanging out.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, like, go do something with this time. Nothing, not like can't watch Netflix, but it's like, go find a friend who wants an app built and go figure out how to make that app. It doesn't, like, just that's just going
Well,
to be
you always
something
want to
that's
hear
going to make you
somebody
different.
striving for something other
Right.
than a
I,
paycheck.
I, I,
So
I, I admire, it's like, again, it's like, I don't need you to be successful. I just need you to try. We'll teach you how to be successful. We'll teach you the job. I just want you to I just want somebody who's like wants to learn, because I think that's a noble attribute. And then essentially it's also work your local network. One of the things a lot of people, and this is the thing, like, especially like
I'm horrible at that. I probably need to get on that because I know
it,
nothing about my like if you're talking about local as in see, I could
there's
be wrong.
multiple.
I'm thinking about town.
You could be talking to your town. You like as layers of any kind of onion. Like, like, who do you know? Ask them who they know. Make those introductions. It's the same thing with content creators, right? Like, the best thing, if you guys like what Ham Solo here is doing, the best way to thank him is tell other people about it. He might get lucky and have the algorithm do it for him whenever there's hype. And that's what I talk to a lot. Like, outside, it's a lot of these same business principles apply. I talk about content creation in business terms so that I separate myself from any kind of emotion, whether a video does well or not. I'm like, all right, I made that video, it's done. Here's how it performs. But in similar kind of concepts, for anybody who's also, wanting to make videos, it's like a lot of people get locked in analysis paralysis. And I go, no, like, if you don't hit publish, no one's ever going to see it. But the other side of it is that if you want because there's so much bad advice out there, especially from the OGs, all the big guys on Twitch and YouTube, because outside of a handful of like exceptions, they all grew with the platform. So as people discovered content and were like, oh, I'm going to go watch this on YouTube, there wasn't what there is now, an oversaturation. So you as a creator, you have to start thinking through, like, how do you stand out in the crowd? And one of that within business and within, content creation is to do something that nobody else is doing. And, or you're do something first. And that's a big win for content creation. And so you'll see, like in my case, like, like I'll be excited about a couple of games and they'll pop off, and like I have a big explosive growth on the channel, and then things kind of die down. And it's like there's not any emotion that I have into it. It's just like that. That's just how it goes. And I also don't chase every trend because that sounds exhausting to me. So it's like, but yeah, back to the thing, because that was a whole preamble. The
Right.
work your
No,
local
good.
network, but then go further. Like, it's like, make those introductions, ask if there's things that you can do, and really kind of, get, if you get that hustle mindset, which I think is a good quality. It can be detrimental when you have a family, if you're never like with your family. So I always have to work to balance that personally, that I'm like spending time with family. Then I've got hustle hours, time to go work, get these things done, get these things moving. But yeah, like, I think it's work your local network, and also be doing stuff, challenge yourself, go pick up a book or a course or what have you, and keep working on that portfolio. But most of how the world is, not how we wish it was, but how the world is, comes from those introductions. When somebody reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I got a guy and he's looking for a job, I'm like, yeah, let me talk to him. Like, yeah, if you think, that he's worth my time, let me sit down and have a conversation with him, and I'll, we'll see if we pass him along or what, whatnot. Yeah, so that's kind of the two key elements. Don't sit on your hands, and then work a local network, and then you can find new opportunities out there. Well, most of it ends up being is a lot of people are just like, oh, I didn't know that you were into that. Oh, cool. Like, I was having this guy do this thing for me, but I'd rather have you do this thing for me, and then you end up building out a little, a little private business, and who knows what happens.
Yeah, and another yeah, so just based off of that, because you just said something that I'm very much dealing with currently, is like a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I didn't even know you did that." People even that you like talk to
Hmm.
regularly on like even social media will be
Yeah.
like, I
Oh,
didn't even know that you did that. Like, like as if you post this stuff every other day or every week, but like for whatever reason, the algorithm, because I'm sure on like Twitter and stuff like that. You post something, hey, go to YouTube and watch it. They're like, dude, I'm not telling you to go to another site. So like I could
Well,
see
and
some of
for
that
that
being
kind of
part of it.
thing, that call to action, like generally maybe 1 to 3% has a click through, and sometimes it could go higher depending on whatever it is. But yeah, so if all of a sudden, if you're thinking about 1 to 3% are people who are going to click a link and go out to another site, like that, that's pretty good. And it's crazy because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like, that's why reaction content is so bad because, like, yeah, you get 1 to 3% of people who will go and check out the content. Yay, thanks, for killing the video. It's like, come on, guys.
No doubt. But so yeah, you were just speaking about how like just getting out and talking to people. How was it for you? And I don't know, like if we hit the area of your life because we're kind of talking about college, leaving
Mhm.
college, building a portfolio dash resume. I'm not sure if you were already into stand-up comedy at that time
I always wanted to
whatsoever.
do it. I just talked myself out of it. I spent a lot of energy talking myself out of doing stand up. And then it
So you
was
weren't
with
there yet.
the no, it was with the pandemic that I was like, oh, okay, with this,
Right.
once we get out of lockdown, I'm gonna go see if I like this, because if I don't, then I don't. But then it was like, oh, I really like this, and I'm really good at this, and it's very, very healthy, for me as just just a little thing that I get to do, and it's crazy that people pay me now for it. But sit down and say, yeah, like, cool, that's great, and then I'll just do that a little bit here and there,
No
and
doubt. But
enjoy it.
before we get into the
Mhm.
comedy in particular,
Yeah, yeah,
because I do want to talk about that for sure. But I want to talk about, because you just got done saying, hey, I talked myself out of it. Talked myself out of it.
yeah.
So in some sort of way, I'm thinking there was, a shy moment of, Ginger Prime where he wasn't really ready to,
There's
take
always
that
been that.
leap.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not that you did comedy and it goes away because that's not how it works, right? You
Right.
just fight, against the shyness and just do it, right? And you're
Yeah.
just like, all right, I'm here. I got to put on a show. Let's go. But but I want to talk about like those early times. So when you were nervous and stuff like that, and you started content creating and
Yeah.
stuff, because like which one came first, the content creation or the comedy?
The content creation.
All right.
And
So
also
with
that was
that,
something that it was also kind of nerve wracking but I ended up doing it with a friend. So we launched Work to Game, and it ended up helping
mm,
out dramatically that we were working on this together. And that just kind of helped give me that confidence and kind of take away a little bit of the unknown and the fear. And then essentially from there, and then years later, I actually launched my own personal channel, Ginger Prime, which then it was like, oh wow, and I was able to take all the lessons and things that I learned from, like, oh, over here, apply them over here, and then it's been
what
a
were
big
some of those
success.
lessons?
Well,
What were some of those like
yeah.
absolutely just like I can't forget this. This right here was a banger
Yeah.
tool.
The first lesson is it's not about me, and it's like a lot of people like make channels because, oh, but I'm like, how can I highlight and elevate the game? Because there's a lot of things that I don't like. I see from content creators, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I know what game you're playing. We all know what game we're playing, but like, how can I create value driven content that really kind of highlights the game? And so especially for a while, people kept saying like, hey, put more of your opinion into news. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just kind of want to cover it, in this way. But I've since kind of gone in that direction where it's like, front load, here's the news, and then I'll talk and discuss a couple of viewpoints that I have from a professional perspective. As a developer, I can talk about, some things. So I've kind of brought that in the last year. But the goal was like, yeah, let me just kind of, so it was create content. It's like that I'm not the focus. How can I highlight the game? And then it was just to create value driven content. What is there for the viewer who's going to watch this, take this, and enjoy it, and hope that they maybe come back. So if it's just me just rambling on some kind of rant, like, that might be entertaining once, but like what value was I able to give to the viewer. And so I like to make guides, which also turn out to be are very searchable. So people usually are like, how do I do this? And turns out that through Ginger Prime Video. It's like, okay. And I still get tons of comments on old guides that are just people like, oh my gosh, thank you. You saved me so much time. I tried to figure this out for 3 hours and it didn't work. And so it's like there's that kind of mindset, which then gives my channel this constant flow of traffic. So like I have, kind of an evergreen approach. And that's one of the things I'm looking at working on this coming year more so, because I've always had these discussion style videos, more like essays. And I'm going to try to bring them up in really high quality essay format going forward, which means they take more time. But, I think overall, hopefully people enjoy them a lot more.
All right. So got that part of your growth specifically, but I want to circle back to when to just that same moment that we were just kind of talking about, but now you're not, you're starting to, work with your, work with your buddy, and then you branch off to do your own thing. And one of the things that you talked about earlier that I wanted to circle back to was localizing, and getting out the word and stuff like that. And as being somebody that wasn't quite ready to do stand up quite yet,
Mhm.
how did you feel, coming out and letting people know, like, yo, I got this channel. I really need you to tune in, check out my stuff, see what it's about. Like, what was like, what, what did you think was like probably the most monumental moment of, shaking hands and telling people stuff? Was it, you know, family? Was it some of the friends? Was it social media? Was it just flat out making the content and then like people are just like, yo, this is dope. And
Yeah.
then it explodes. Like which
It's
one was
definitely it's the
for
yo,
you?
this is dope, and this does real well. Yeah, the comments ends up being kind of the big reason to see people respond. And yeah, you'll get the trolls and things like that. And people hate you for your, whatever reason. A lot of
Yeah.
people hate me
It
because
doesn't
I'm
matter.
ginger. Like they're like, oh, I hate you, I hate your skin. And it's like, okay. All
Crazy.
right, man. Yeah, it's weird. It's just like, okay, no, thanks for letting me know. Like, I just am never really offended by anything. So it's just like, all right, like I'm, just like, cool. All right. Thanks for letting me know. Moving on. But it was definitely that. It was like because the family doesn't understand it. They also don't understand the comedy.
Right.
So it's like I've always like been weird, in that regards. Like and I'm just comfortable in that space because I know who I am. I'm like, all right, like you don't have to understand what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna go in this direction. And it takes them years. So it was finally like 5 years into it, my dad goes, oh my gosh, you're like talk radio for video games. I go, yeah, that's a great way to describe what I do. And he's like, I get it. But for 5 years, he was like, I don't know what you're doing. It's like, all
That's
right, man.
crazy.
Yeah.
Just yeah, just for it to take that long for somebody that you literally grew up with
Yeah.
to
Well,
understand what
and
you're
that's,
doing.
and
It's
he
wild.
like, and my dad is interesting because he's always like that accounting. He's an accountant. And so he was an accounting in mindset. He doesn't understand that in the creative world, it's a bit like, we call this maybe the entertainment business to a degree, that you could do a lot of work and not get paid. And then you might get paid years later for all of that work. And for him, it just, he can't reconcile that. Like, like, what do you mean? Like, why are you doing this and no one's paying you to do this? You should be getting paid. It's like, oh, maybe I will, maybe down the road, or something like that. But it's not like a 1-to-1, like there's, I have, I don't worry about that stuff. And that would just drive him crazy. He's like, I don't get it, like, and then essentially when it's like, oh yeah, hey dad, the channel's making this much money every month. And he was like, wait, what? Like how? And I go, well, Google sells ads and then they give me a cut of that. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's
Pretty
incredible. And
cool.
so once like from an accounting perspective, it's like, it's not like money that I'm like going to quit my job over and do that full time. I think that actually lessens the content. but it ends up being something where it's like, oh, okay, oh wow, this is something that's real. It's not this, this silly little side project that I have.
No doubt. That's awesome. So before we jump back into the games, because that's why we're
Yeah.
here talking today, I need to know like where you thought like, I'm balancing this, that, and the third. I'm finally ready to take that leap into comedy. And I know you said it was, COVID
It was,
time, sure.
telling
But
the kids jokes, and it just comes down to like when I look forward in a look back kind of way, like when I'm 60, am I going to look back and be like, damn it, I always wanted to do this. Why didn't I try? And the answer is yeah. And so that's the thing. Like there's anything you're like, man, I wish I would, like when you're sitting down, when who knows whether it's 60, 70, 80, 90, and you're looking back at your life, like what are you gonna look at regretting the most? And it's like for me, it's gonna be like, I was like, yeah, like I need to go find out if I like this. Because if I don't, then I get to tell my older self, like, no, I tried it, didn't enjoy it, and then it's like, okay, well, at least you tried it. Again, I'm not called to be successful. I'm called to just be faithful. I'm called to be, truthful, in that regards. And like, all right, what's the truest version of me? Oh, people always tell me I'm funny. Like like I love making people laugh. I've always loved making people laugh. And I can always, for whatever reason, intuit what's going on with people. And I can find that moment, for them in our conversation. And it's wonderful. It's a real gift to me. Like I really get a lot of joy out of that. And it was just taking that and turning that into a performance. Like how do I now not just have a good punchline to what we're all talking about, but how do I set this up? How do I take people on this journey? And that's been a real fun learning experience, sitting down, learning how to really set that up. And then, timing, delivery, what's the mood of the room. And what I've learned from that, which is actually really interesting because it ties back kind of, to what the theme what we're talking about, is that the YouTube videos gave me a part of that. So a lot of people are like, wow, you're really comfortable on a mic. And it's like, yeah, no, I've been talking to a mic for 5 years, like, yeah, like, hey guys, blah, 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 so it's like, I built up a comfort level for that. But what's different about a YouTube video versus a stand-up is that YouTube, I make it, I put it out there, and then I get to read the comments. So there's a time between the thought, me speaking it, publishing it, and then essentially getting feedback. In a comedy club, I get it immediately.
Instant.
Either it either laughs, or I sometimes I'm like, I like getting, if I can get a groan, or like, oh, like the jokes are crafted to have and check out different reactions, because then I can pivot that and play with it in a fun way. Like, oh man, like if I like with that, like with the racist joke, it's like if anybody ever is like, hell yeah, we found one, it's like, you get to play with the crowd and the audience through that. And it feels like it's just like this living energy that's just like, happening in real time, where YouTube has a similar very feel to it. It's just you don't get that feedback until it's already out there.
Delayed,
and so yeah, it's a delayed reaction. And then you can't, then you're reading text as opposed. And that's why one of the things I do with my live streams is I bring people into voice chat. So we're actually talking and having a real-time reaction. And if I say something funny, then, and people laugh, like those are really, I think, fun moments. And it allows me to test out my stand-up. So because I don't have all the time in the world, I don't hit every open mic or do every show. I have a kind of a, out of respect for my wife and family, it's all within balance. Like, I only have so much time in a week, and I want to make sure that I'm not an absentee dad,
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, that's the, pride and joy of being alive right there, right? Is, raising somebody and giving them the opportunities to have all these different choices within their lives as they grow up. So, and especially, coming from the creative aspect of mine, from myself and from you, it's just like, seeing all these opportunities in which that you can just bring them to fruition. They don't have to be already written in text or like completely told, this is how you become, a plumber or something like super, you know, good for society, but
Yeah.
maybe not everybody's cup of tea. So it's like being able to be part of that, like I'm like creating my own version of art and people are enjoying it, sharing it, and I'm benefiting, they're benefiting, we're all happy. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, it has to be pretty exciting, maybe a little scary, but more or less kind of exciting because you're just kind of like, man, I have all these great tips that I'm just excited to hand down to you as soon as the time
Yeah.
calls. Right?
Yeah, and especially with the kids too, because like the number one profession people want to be right now is a YouTuber. So for me, there's this element that as my kids grow up, and if they are ever like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do these creative, outlets, like I have like real world experience and can guide them. And if they don't want to do that, that's all well and good too. But being that seems to be, who knows, that will what 10 years, 20 years will hold down the down the road, and whether people are like, oh man, YouTube, that's so old. We're all on this, 1 second video, or
I mean,
whatever.
just think about it. You could possibly, like, not saying that you will or this will be a thing in the future, but I could totally see this becoming more of a thing as we, go down this rabbit hole that is YouTube through the spans of our lives, is
Hmm.
channels getting passed down to people just like Jeopardy
Yeah.
and stuff like that, where it's like new host
Hmm.
or new kind of person, but same type of, show feeling and whatnot, as long as this new host can kind of carry on that same image.
Hmm.
Um, Almost like being a owner of a franchise. So you think of the Bus family for the Lakers or
Hmm.
whatnot, and it's just like passed down to pass down to pass down, and each one of them have talent, but talent different,
It's
on
interesting
how to
because
manage.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Ramsey, but he's been talking about that because everything was kind of built around him as the brand. And they have transitioned to where they have different Ramsey personalities so that when he does retire or step away from, that position, that the show and, can go on. And I think that's actually kind of like smart. So it's like, yeah, when it comes to the kids, like, yeah, maybe like right now, being that they're kids, I don't feature them in my content. I have, we
Right.
have kind of they want to make videos. And so we will make videos and we'll just make them private. And so then they can watch them on TV and they get a kick out of that. It's a lot of fun. I'll lay down on this couch that's behind me and, help them out, get them all set up in the chair where they play a game and they narrate. And then I edit down the video and stuff. But those aren't for the public. Those are just kind of for us. And I figure whenever they turn 18, if they want that stuff out on the internet, then they can choose to have that stuff out on the internet at that time, as opposed to like, oh yeah, because like it's just, they're kids. I want them to be kids. I don't want them to sit here and
Right.
have to worry about these things. And they can't,
They
as a
don't need to be
child,
looking
can't
at
they
analytics
can't
and comments
fathom.
and stuff like
Well,
that.
comment. Well, even like you, if you were like a kid channel, I don't like comments and stuff like that anymore, which I think is a really smart move. But
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, it's like they can't fathom what how the internet's going to react. What if the internet decides, as a hive mind that it can be, we see what happens with Twitter, like, oh, we're going to signal this person out, we're going to bully them until they, until something bad happens, and it's like, nah, I'd rather them let them be kids, wait until they're adults, give them all the tools so they know how to deal with overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly negative stuff. It's like, yeah, like if you're going to put yourself out there, here's what we can expect. Does that mean you should, you shouldn't be a recluse, things like that. But a lot of insight so that, and I don't just share my knowledge, or planning on it just with the kids. Like I've sat down with a lot of upcoming creators and a lot of people and just like, listen, here's, I believe in a video strategy over a live strategy. I see a lot of guys pushing into like, I'm going to be live, got to be live, got to be live. And then they never make any video content. And thus, no one ever hears of them. And it's like they get frustrated, they burn out because live takes so much and it
It does.
takes so much and does not give
I've had a few
Any
people tell me that I need to start doing videos because like all I do is live stuff, and they're just like, there's gonna
it's
be
not that
people
you
that
can't
like
be
are
live.
interested
Right.
in you, but like they don't want to sit there for 2 hours.
They don't want to sit there for 2 hours. They don't know you, and that's the thing. It's like you got to think about that introduction, and
Right.
and a 5-minute video is a great introduction. And then and if you gave that viewer something good, hey, you helped me beat this boss, or hey, I was stuck on that puzzle, or hey, like you already have the knowledge. A lot of people talk themselves out of making the content. I feel like the content just writes itself. Like I did this. This is how I did it. Here, here's the steps. If you want to do it too, so that when people are finding it, that's how how you get discovered. And then yeah, you can have live be a part of the strategy in terms of your content. It just, in my mind, should be less than 10%.
That's wild.
Now, but there's
Because
a
it's
lot of
like
people who, yeah,
99% of what I do, and it's 99 a lot of what I see a lot of people do.
yeah, a lot
Like
of people. Well, the
it's
thing
not
is
just
that you're going to
me,
get
but
sick.
I've seen
Yeah.
even people with tens of thousands of followers that only do live, and
There
they
are
have a
probably
lot of regular people
exceptions,
that come through.
but I would always look at it as a function of time. Like, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Mid-30s, 35.
Okay. So in 10 years, like there's going to be physical changes that you'll have to account for. You're going to get sick. Their life's going to find a way, right? And if you build your entire, content around being live, the minute that becomes where you're like, oh man, I really don't want to go live. Oh
Oh
man,
yeah,
I'm
like miss
tired
a
today.
month or something like that.
Well, and the thing is, like for me, like I don't know how closely you followed some of the content or the at least the messaging out there, but I've been struggling with like anxiety, depression. I've just been constantly gaining weight for like the last 11, 12 years. Now again, I was an athlete. Like I'm tracking what I'm eating. I'm going to the doctors, and they're like, okay, you just need to cut out pizza. I go, I haven't seen an effing pizza in months, like years. It's like, what? How can I cut out the sugary drinks? I did that when I was 13. So like, what do I cut? And so I constantly gain weight, and it just slowly and surely. Well, anyway, it turns out I have a massive testosterone deficiency, and that's like essentially my body's overproducing maybe not cortisol. There's a stress hormone. So I'm overproducing stress hormone. My body's in fight or flight. So it's just storing anything that I eat. It doesn't matter. Like I could eat barely anything. And, so it's like, it's just been this journey and the struggle, but I was just having all this fatigue, anxiety, and more. Well, it turns out after, all of this, we found the problem. I've been getting treated. I've lost 50 pounds since
Oh,
going on
congrats. Wow.
testosterone. Thanks. I still got 60 to go, like until I'm, back at my right, correct weight for my height, back at those, that college weight. And college, I ended up getting down to like 180, and people were kind of like, dude, you need to eat something. You're too skinny right now. This is weird. So it's like, I'm usually generally like between the 210 and the 190 is kind of what I'm shooting for. But to say that is that like, I don't know if you're going to go through that or anybody's going to go through that, but I look at it in terms of sustainability, right? I love making videos. I'm going to make videos until I can't make a video anymore. So either I can never, if I ever lose the ability to speak, whatever. But I love it. It is so fun. It is. I love talking video games. It's the outside of playing video games, talking about video games is like the next best thing. And that seems to be where, especially when I'm at work, I love listening to what people are saying, what the discussions are being had about it. I don't agree with a lot. I think a lot of the popular opinion is misinformed, but it's the popular opinion. So I get a lot, people will throw a lot of crap my way because I don't follow along with it. And I'm like, I don't want to be a parrot.
That's what makes you unique, right?
Well, I think that's also one of the things that it's like, oh, if you had 1 million subs, would you quit your job? No, like, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. And if you don't want to sub to me, that's, there's so many, like, you can find anything that you're looking for on this app. Go find the thing that you're going to be happy with. Don't let me ruin your day. But if you want to have a real discussion, I'm going to tell you what I really think. And then I hope that you tell me what you really think. And one of my favorite videos to make is what I call the comment section, where I go and highlight opinions pro and against anything that I've said. And I talk about them in that regards as a kind of a cap to the previous video, where essentially you watch this video to get my opinion on this subject. Here's my opinion. Oh, you're an idiot because of this, this, and this. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So then I'll do a follow up on those kind of videos, because I want to give the people who make time to tell me their opinion, I want to give them attention back. I want to have that. I want to have that dialogue with gamers, because like that's, I don't know, that's, I think, part of the fun in any of it. That's why it's like I don't really care about the views and the likes. How many comments did I get? Okay, cool. Let me go read them. And people will be like, you shouldn't read the comments. It's like, you know what? Some people are going to be jerks. I can be a jerk right back to them. I don't, it's a variable depending on like how Christian do I want to be today versus like, does this person need some tough love? And it's like, yeah, it's like, hey, bud, okay, man, I'm just going to pray for you today, or sometimes I'm like, dude, you need to grow the fuck up and get a real, like, you need to wake up, dude. Like the way you're talking to me right now, like, isn't healthy. Like, I don't think your parents are going to be pleased, if they saw you talking to me like this. So it varies. It just depends on what mood you catch me in. I try to lean into the loving in the Christian and the prayerful response, but sometimes that pisses them off even more. And usually when I get, there's a certain demographic and I can always kind of tell who they are, and they'll just try to come at me. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm just going to offer my mass for you guys. I'm praying for y'all right now. I don't know. Prayer doesn't work. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to, and then that usually just, they usually just kind of disappear after that, which was what I prayed for. So they can tell me prayer doesn't work, but it works for me, I think, a lot.
That's funny. So
thank you.
So
I have a whole bits about that too.
So yeah. Like I said, I want to hop back over to the gaming part, because that's why we came here. And I love that you brought up kind of like the immaturity and stuff that has to do with it, because I want to take you back to a time where you were maybe a little immature, because you actually said, in fact, earlier that, hey, man, there was a time where, I was the Nintendo fanboy, right?
Yeah.
And,
oh yeah.
Luigi's better than Halo, yada, yada.
I can relate to that, because like I remember when I was like, Nintendo is king. This is garbage. So yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about in particular with this part, because I think this is always kind of fun, is I want to tackle the moment where you're like, all right, I'm just gonna give it a try. Like, you stop just talking only about your shit, like your favorite thing, and you were just like, I'm gonna give it an honest try. I'm actually gonna go and buy a different brand, or like really give it an actual chance, instead of like, maybe owning it and being like, I am never gonna play this thing. But like,
that's a great question.
So what was that for you? Was it, and I'm a guess real quick, maybe you can tell me I'm wrong.
Okay.
But I'm guessing it was PlayStation with Final Fantasy. Am I crazy?
PlayStation, I have every PlayStation I've ever owned is because of Final Fantasy. Like, I just have never been really into, I love Twisted Metal. Like, I guess I it's not true to say that their franchises didn't speak to me. Twisted Metal was a ton of fun. But Final Fantasy was what got me to buy the PlayStation, and it wasn't like I was like actually really against it. It was just like, okay, like, yeah, I'm playing Final Fantasy, playing Nintendo SNES, and had an N64, because a huge Mario is also a huge franchise to me all the time. Like, when I was so happy they brought it to mobile, because I was like, the Nintendo isn't reaching the kids, and that's going to be a bad strategy at some point. And because I was like, oh, why would like, people aren't, because people are playing on the phone and anyway, etc. Anyway, but yeah, so PlayStation, I've never, like, I've owned every PlayStation. I think I was really excited about the PlayStation 2. It was awesome. I did get a Dreamcast, so it was, I wasn't like against consoles. I was just, I remember when Xbox and GameCube launched, I think within a week of each other. Like, it was like, yeah, okay, I'm going GameCube. This is gonna be great. It's good. We got Mario. We got the franchises that I love. And my brother was pro Xbox. My brother's 7 years younger than me, and he was like, yeah, I'm getting an Xbox. Brian, you got to get an Xbox. So he was always trying to preach Xbox to me. And so it was funny though, because he got an Xbox, and I was like, dude, I'm hearing a lot of good about Halo. I'm not really like, I don't know about it, but I've heard a lot of really good things. A lot of people like it. So for his birthday, he got an Xbox. For Christmas, I got him Halo. And then I come back for the summer for college because I was in college. He's in, I think, middle school, high school. All his friends are just like, they're all playing Halo. They're all just Halo, Halo, Halo. So that's where I got exposed to a little bit of it. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. They did it. They did a good job. But it wasn't until like Halo 2 that I got my own Xbox. But to answer the question about kind of the moment, so in all of that, PlayStation, Nintendo, Dreamcast, even, just I love video games. I just was always passionate about video games. There was this aspect where I was looking for games. As I got older, I got really like, this is something where it's like, I'm glad I'm not this way anymore, but I got really honed in on that if IGN didn't rate it at a 9 or above, then I wasn't even gonna bother. Like I was like, that if it's not at least a 9, I'm not gonna waste my time. And then I think it was where I went. It was all about them, like all that about that score. I think it was then when I sat down and actually was like, I played some of these games that were like a 7 or an 8. I was like, this is really fun. And then I was like, okay. And this is all around that time of the Xbox, PlayStation, I guess 2 era, where it was like, I'm missing out on a lot of games because I've put in this arbitrary score that somebody has to hit on this opinion. And I understand, I wasn't loaded with money. I was in college. So it was like, yeah, you kind of had to pick and choose what games you wanted to purchase. But yeah, that's where I realized, you know what, I need to be willing, continue to be willing to step out of that element and try different games, different platforms and do that as a, just as a passion. So I've owned, I think, every possible system that's come out. Like I didn't have the Atari, but like that was kind of before my time personally.
But let's talk about like the Genesis.
I didn't own a Genesis, so that was where definitely was, I was Nintendo fanboy through and through. But I did get a Saturn, because it was a new console, and
Saturn's
I was like,
when you started to really,
try to force myself out of that like one
Yeah.
console mindset, and then Saturn, but then Saturn just like tanked,
right.
and then they did Dreamcast, and Dreamcast I thought was really good. I thought they did a really good job with the Dreamcast. We enjoyed that thoroughly in the dorms, like with Soul Calibur, and even I like the Sonic games. And then essentially Sonic just went downhill for a while, and then some of the new stuff that he's doing is really good. But he's one of the most inconsistent mascots out there. Where I felt like Nintendo Mario games have always been at least high quality. I was frustrated at the naming convention behind the new Super Mario Brothers. So I'm really glad this year they launched Super Mario Wonder as opposed to, like new Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Is like, why are you calling it new? Like, I hate it because it's 20 years old, man. It's not new. Let's go.
All right. So you talked about that. So Sega Saturn really helped you kind of, evolve your kind of tastes in other consoles and stuff like that. It helped at that time. You ended up with Dreamcast. You rocked with the PlayStation because of the Final Fantasies throughout the time.
yeah.
So you've rocked with every PlayStation.
I bought Final Fantasy 7 before I could afford a PlayStation, and I read that manual every night, and I was just working and saving up until I was able to go buy a PlayStation. We got it at the Walmart. I was so excited that I finally was able to. I think it was like 3 weeks after I had Final Fantasy 7 for 3 weeks before I was able to sit down and actually play it. It was so wild.
So as a gamer like yourself that has, when you got into gaming, hardware was everything. So, from the cartridge to the, console itself to the controllers, wired, all of them.
Yeah, all wired. Except for the Wavebird went on the GameCube. That was a game changer.
Yeah, the silver one. Yeah,
dude.
I remember that sucker. Yeah, he held that thing up at like the E3 or whatever that he had too when they revealed it. I thought that was pretty nice.
It made playing the GameCube so much fun. In fact, we were playing Switch. I picked up Mario Party for the kids for Christmas, and we were all playing that. And we have 3 controllers, and I have one that's wired for the 4th controller. And the dog came in, hit the cord, threw the switch out of the dock right onto the floor. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like this is something that the kids, they're like, what's happening? I'm like, yeah, I remember dealing with this like as a kid, and it was just like it frustrated me to no end as an adult because I'm like, yeah, dude, wireless controls, let's go.
I don't know
I
why
am
my
wired
dad
on. I am
says
wired
this
on
hasn't
PC though.
happened in 25 years. I don't understand what he's trying to say.
Like
This hasn't happened in
thankfully
20
nothing.
goddamn years.
Thankfully nothing broke. Thankfully nothing broke.
But so going with that, so having all this hardware stuff and then seeing now things are kind of going further and further away from not exactly all hardware, because obviously we got consoles and different ways of being able to play certain things. But as for like physical games being damn near
They're
like
going away.
wiped away.
They're gone.
Okay.
This has always been the trajectory that the industry has been on. Game companies, have constantly been jealous and trying to find ways to not have their because they get that the secondary market, they'd never see a cut of that. So the option was either to go with like NFTs as a method of your digital library, so that way any additional resell would be they'd get that smart contract kickback, but they haven't adopted that yet. Or essentially, yeah, like they want to go digital. Now I've been all digital since the Xbox One generation, Xbox One and PS4, and that's actually was one of the most frustrating thing about
transition though. Like,
no, I had no problem with it.
Mad about it at all?
No, not at all. Like I've seen games like get scratched and walk out of my house and in college dorms, and so there'd be games I'm like, oh, what happened to that? And maybe somebody who came to my house stole it or something. So the ability to have my games wherever I want, wherever I'm at, without having to sit here and worry about managing these discs, which could get scratched up. And, I remember blowing on the NES cards and stuff like that. I was like, no, like I want the game. I'm going to buy the game. It does mean that you purchase less games, but that's where Game Pass as a subscription model comes in to kind of like ease that burden, so it's like, ends up being such a huge value proposition. So I haven't I see people complain, but they're so in the minority, but they're very vocal. You'll get that vocalness online, but they're so in the minority when you look at overall how every video game is being consumed in terms of the majority. And so with the Xbox leak, and honestly with PlayStation with their Slim, where it's like, yeah, detachable disk drive, I mean, there's a chance that the next generation has some level of physical media to it, but Walmart, Best Buy, all of these retail chains have announced they're not going to be selling physical games anymore. So will there be physical games? Yeah, there'll be a niche market, like a hobbyist and collectors market that will exist, but I don't think come 2030 that people are printing games on discs outside of a special collector's edition, something to put up on the wall,
Okay, so you just spoke on physical versus digital, but you kind of mentioned it, and I know you kind of went into it a little bit, but I want to hear your personal thoughts on all these different type of subscription services and how you, as somebody that you've worked on games and stuff like that, how do you view and value a subscription service, knowing that maybe something that you work on may end up in that kind of a service? Are you
if I get the ability, I will be launching my game on the Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, or like whatever the tiered system is, because the economics behind it is that I would have an unknown IP. And if you go look at just the financials from the Sony leak this last week, you see why they make Spider-Man and not Ratchet and Clank. And even that Ratchet and Clank eventually became profitable after that slide. The reality is like, you're going to sell, known IP does way better, in terms of sales. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if you're going to sit here and go into a saturated market, especially a market that like digital sales, like I'm not in anybody's storefront, how do I get in front of people and then at the same time get them willing to try out my game without having to be a free to play microtransaction driven crap, a crapshoot. Yeah, the subscription service is, and that's what we were already talking about in pre-production with
So it's like
with the studio.
detrimental to you, kind of thing.
No, it's having those subscription services is a win. Like that's something where I'm like, let's get people playing the game. And so it's that I'm all for that. Like that's what I'm planning to do, not as a detriment, but actually as a business strategy to reduce the overall risk. Now, then you can go into like, a sequel, a known IP. Oh, like this create like, like would I launch Elden Ring on, Game Pass? No. Like that
Sure.
doesn't need that as a service. And at some point, maybe it does. Like at some point you could sit here and say, yeah, the game's been out for 10 years. Let's just, I'll sell it and put it in Game Pass. And that way anybody who hasn't checked it out can check it out and see what they think.
Yeah, it's
but,
like GTA 5 so many years later. It's not exactly that.
Right. And so like they're
for
gaming.
it, but, I mean, they can use that extra little kickback.
There's this reality versus the perceived reality. So in reality, gamers talk a big game, but they don't back it up with their actions most of the time. So you've seen like AA games and like Forspoken launched this year. I actually thought Forspoken was a fun game. It wasn't a $70 game. If Forspoken launched,
I waited for it to go on sale and I bought it.
$40, I was like, this is a fun game. Like for $40, this is great. But the internet's got like, you see those kind of hate raids and trains. Now people are actually checking out the game, and you're seeing a lot more positive about it. And that's actually like, yeah, that's what that's the pattern that I see online. People are gonna hate on things for attention, and they're gonna get that attention. And sometimes that's gonna work, and sometimes that's not. But what I see is like in versus that. So a lot of gamers will talk like, yeah, this is the game I want. They'll say like, these are the games that I want. I just want to buy a game. I just want it to be complete. I just want it to be finished. I don't want any microtransactions. But then you actually go look at what they play, and they play the free to play microtransaction driven game. And yeah, they might be fatigued and they're saying they want this, but that game came out and they don't go spend the money. Oh man, I don't want to spend $40, so it's like, there's a reality of competition within the business model itself. And I don't personally gravitate towards free to play games. There's always this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like as soon as it gets, weird, I'll just bail. And that's why I'm really big into buy to play games initially. And so, because then I think if nothing else, like you can have a real conversation. I don't have to sit here and be manipulative, and I understand why game studios do it. So I actually look at the subscription services coming on board as a healthy thing for the industry, because then it allows for games to exist at multiple different levels of tiers. So a lot of people hated on Redfall. Redfall launched with some issues. It's actually kind of a fun game.
Yeah. It did.
What did it cost me? It cost me nothing, because it's a part of the subscription. It exists on there. I can go and play Redfall every October forever, because I'm I don't see myself unsubscribing, or I can always just purchase it if I really want it. But yeah, Redfall, maybe like that's a $30 game, right? But they launch it for sale at like the $70 price point, and I think that price point as well, when we start talking about like, is Sony going to have $150 Spider-Man 3 version?
Right.
Probably. Okay, well, do you feel that you're getting $150 worth of value? That's going to vary person to person. And at the end of the day, it's like, oh, imagine if that launched into the PlayStation Plus. So I think that's the value of how you get people to launch into the service. But then essentially you open up the gates of more games and more opportunities. And I think the studies and the numbers show that. I don't necessarily care because of how they have the deal structured. If somebody plays my game and then buys my game, that'd be great, But if they play, if I can get them to play the game and they like it, and somebody asked earlier what kind of game, it's right now a secret. It's really cool, and I'm really excited about it. But once I'm ready to show people, because if I just told you what it is, I run the risk of somebody else who's better, faster, and has more capital than I do to make it before I can. But then I think essentially what it will end up being is that, I can show people how it works, and then they can decide for themselves if they want to be excited about it, or if they're like, oh, that, I'm good. That's not something that speaks to me personally. So, yeah, I see it as a value because I think it allows a lot more different tiers of games to release without it having to be a AAA, $300 million budget game, and hope that people buy it, and then marketing on top of that. That's where, like, I think the indie scene has been really, really exciting to see people step up. And what we've seen from the different showcases is, I think a lot of, like, people use mid in a negative way, but like in terms of gaming, like sometimes
I know
it's
that's
like,
exactly what you're about to say. Let's go.
yeah,
I love
exactly.
to
It's
hear
like,
it.
cool. And then if there isn't this, like, oh man, like, do I really want to have this game installed on it? Or let me just taste it. Let me just try it. And so with rentals, obviously rentals are going to be gone with all digital, like, and most of it is gone anyway. Like, I don't remember renting anything recently. Yeah, I think, and I think with streaming coming on board with gaming as well as a technology with GeForce Now, not sponsored, but they're freaking incredible. What they offer, that yeah, I don't, I think a lot of people who are hesitant, they are looking at how the industry used to be, not how the industry is, and not what it will be here in the next 10 years. Whether that is a positive or negative, honestly, I'm not worried about it because I'm having fun playing games today. And people who are going to, if they want to get and spend their energy and be embittered, because, in 10 years, Microsoft might raise the price of Game Pass. It's like, yeah, my hope is that Sony steps up and has a competing service, that or they're going to be acquired. There's no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, they're in a weird spot. Like, they're not in the best spot. They got capital, they got cash, but that's why, like, yeah, them raising
What
their
are you gonna
prices, I
do
was
with
like,
it? Right.
what do you, well, not in it, but in the grand scheme of things, like Amazon, like, is stepping in, like, and if it isn't Microsoft, a lot of people like Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. I was like, it was going to be them, it was going to be Tencent, it was going to be Amazon. Like,
People forget
they
that
were
Activision was
looking to
looking to
sell.
be bought.
They were looking to sell, and Microsoft said, "Yo, I got $69 billion in cash. There's
Right.
it's just cash. Here's the cash." And that now that's an asset for Microsoft, and they'll be able to, they're gonna leverage that to really put PlayStation in a bind, which is gonna either make PlayStation make some really smart decisions, or it's gonna have PlayStation make some really dumb decisions. And I think what it's already shaken the industry. Like, it's already given Microsoft a real competitive edge over what PlayStation currently offers. And I don't want PlayStation to go away. Like, the PlayStation 5 controller, I think, is what, like, for the $70, like, this is way better than an Xbox Series controller. The only thing that tops it is the high-end Xbox controller, in my opinion. But I love to see Sony. I want to see them get, out there. Yeah, dude. I want them to succeed. I want them to compete with Microsoft because I think competition means us as gamers win. But I
Right.
don't think the
Can't be
future
boxed
is
in.
I don't think the future is going to be boxed in. And Sony has the mindset about selling PS5s. I don't think the future is going to be about selling consoles. It's going to be about selling the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is going to go where you are. And this is a generational thing. I asked the other day on Twitter, I was like, hey, is anybody console warring that's under 25? Like, I would venture to bet the vast majority of people who are console warring are at least 30 and over, like maybe 40, where it's like you're kind of locked in that old mindset. And I was like, I talk to my nephews and I see my kids, and there's no brand loyalty to a console. They're like, yeah, I'm playing this. I'm playing Fortnite and I'm playing it on my phone, Okay, well, I have it on this, yeah, that cross play and cross save really breaks down that, like, why do I have to buy your console?
Right.
Like,
And I've been telling a lot of people, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me here or not, but this is the new console for majority of
a
people.
lot of the kids, yeah, especially because,
Phones.
like,
And
yeah,
and in my opinion, I think it's gonna continue to trend that. I mean, literally literally the new iPhone is a gaming console. It literally is.
Yeah.
You can hook it up to whatever you want, hook whatever controller up to you want, and play your games natively downloaded.
Same thing with
Onto that phone.
PC. So it's like we're not, and so while console sales, like they're like if you certain ways you measure it, there is growth, but it's a rapidly declining to the point where I think it's like maybe a 1% growth from PS4 to PS5, and that means that the decline is right around the corner, because what happens is people go from the console actually into a PC environment, and then in your PC environment your games continue to stay with you. So me
Right.
buying a game on Steam runs on this computer, and guess what? It will run on the next computer, and then the next computer, and the computers just get better, as opposed to
It's gonna
wait. And that's actually one of
backward compatible your
yeah,
any
and that's
console
where
that you ever
I
get.
thought the Xbox Series X really had the edge over the PlayStation, is because they have kind of what they called smart delivery. Like, these are your games. This is your account, your ecosystem. These are your games, whether they're Xbox original games, 360 games, Xbox One games, or Series games. Like, the system just handles it. And then PlayStation came in kind of struggling a little bit. PlayStation, it wins the war in exclusives because they have built out that quality strategy, and that's a double-edged sword, because when you start looking at 380-400 million dollars to make a video game, like, the risk
Crazy.
is, well, and the thing
And it's
is the
not a
risk
forever
ends up,
game either. It's just like
it's not a
beat
forever
it and you're
game.
done.
You beat it and you're done, and then it goes on sale. And so a lot of the things, when I hear people complain about $70 video games, I'm like, don't pay the hype tax, dude. We're not talking about a Nintendo game. Nintendo games don't really traditionally go on sale. There's occasionally you might find a discount. Okay. But I know that Zelda is going to be $60, $70. Mario,
Breath of the Wild is still expensive, bro.
well, yeah. And
New
it's like,
one's
it's
out.
not going to go down in price. Outside of them, as the exception of the rule, like, if you're complaining about $70 video games, wait 3 weeks. All that is, all $70 is a hype tax. Generally, games are around $40. It's like, and they're so cheap comparative, especially with inflation. And so, yeah, for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think there's a lot of doomsaying out there. A lot of people talking about like the death of video games, and it's like there is a potential for a crash, but I think that's why subscription services are the solution to easing that crash away. Because if video games only can get more and more expensive, and then the volume of your sell through is less and less and less, because nothing is going to top the PS2 in console sales. Like, I just, if it ever becomes not true, awesome. I think the Switch might not be the only contender, but we're about to see a new Switch. So it's like,
and the PS2 is really a multi-need console when
yeah,
that has never been heard of.
right.
That
And so
time.
while there's been growth, it isn't as substantial as where you look at PC. So if Sony wants to sell more of their games, they're already starting to adopt a PC strategy. The question is that what strategy do they have going forward, and can they catch up to Xbox, and their strategy? Because they've been firing on all cylinders this entire generation. And if you're buying the PlayStation for the exclusive, there are many people who are telling me now that their PlayStation just gathers dust because they bought it for this exclusive, they played it, and then they just go back to playing all their other games everywhere else. And then, oh, a new PlayStation exclusive, I'm going to come back and play it. And so then Sony has kind of built what Nintendo has built, but I think Nintendo has built it better. But maybe that's my fanboyism.
Maybe, possibly, we all have a little bit of a step we're willing to take in one direction versus another.
Yeah.
But it's just ingrained. I mean, we're humans. We like one team over another. It's just is.
Yeah, I think from like rooting it in terms of teams, like I think the console wars can be kind of entertaining. It's just that some people just end up making it their identity, and I'm like, all right, man. That's a little strange.
Yeah, and that's never something I really want. Like I let it be known that I'm an Xbox guy. Let that be known. That's what I am. If you're gonna ask me, yo, where am I playing most of the time? It's on Xbox.
Yeah.
But am I gonna make my identity out to hate everything else because
Right.
Xbox is my main? Nah. I might,
Who's got that kind of time?
might talk a little extra shit sometimes, but the last thing I'm gonna do is miss out on a dope experience just because
Yeah.
my specific fan base or my specific
Yeah.
following on Twitter or something like that doesn't love it. And
Yeah.
I don't care.
I
I'm gonna
always
play the
say
shit out of
gamers
it.
first. Like I look at it as like what's best for gamers, and not these corporations, in that regards. And it's like, okay, what gives competition? What gives the gamer choice? And it's like, yeah. And so when that's the same kind of thing, it's like, yeah, I do like, I play primarily PC cloud and Xbox. And then I'll play Nintendo, with the kids. And then I have my PlayStation, which I'm playing Final Fantasy 16. And I had the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters on that one, so that ends up being kind of like, here's my Final Fantasy box right now. And yeah, like it's I like having, I'm very fortunate because I can afford all of these things. However, I don't think that to be a gamer you should have to. You shouldn't have to buy into every ecosystem to play these games. And I think it's more about getting the games in players' hands, because what I see happen is that then you build communities around a game as opposed to communities around a platform. And if it's a community around a game, it's a stronger community. And that's where crossplay, cross save comes in. And Sony's made some good moves. They bought into Discord, they've integrated that. So it's like, whether you're playing this game on PC or a PlayStation, we're all hanging out, we're all talking, we're all having fun, hopefully.
I found it interesting that earlier that you said something about like the death of gaming,
Yeah.
because
It's a
I've
YouTube
heard,
trope.
I've heard that circulating for a lot of years now.
Yeah.
But like the closer we get to like the cloud gaming, and this game could just be played on PC instead of on a console, the louder the corner of the room yells, right?
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I feel like as much as they think it's like a death in gaming, in my opinion, it's more of a death in a tradition.
Yeah.
You're used to, you know, whipping up. You're used to seeing your dinner whipped up this way, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now that somebody brought a sous vide in the room and you ain't seen it before, you think it's terrible.
Yeah.
So,
I like that
I
you
just
brought up
think
a
that's
sous vide, because the like sous vide steak, dude. And then you
talk about it.
sear it, and then you sear it right after, dude. 100%. And it's weird because when you take a steak out of the sous vide, it looks gross because it's all gray and stuff. And then you get that butter real hot, pop it in there, gets that sear, and then you cut into it, and it's tender and it's like perfectly cooked. Oh, dude, yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, so yeah, not a lot of people know about that sous
I like to
vide,
eat.
man.
I like to eat. Oh, dude,
Yeah,
yeah.
that sous vide is something.
My wife will make yogurt with the sous vide machine. So
I ain't
she'll
never
make
heard of
homemade
that. That's
yogurt.
wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like whenever she gets into that yogurt making mood, I'm like, yep, we got this big old pot, sous vide's going, because it heats, it's got to maintain that heat. So sous vide ends
Right.
up being a really good
And it
way
doesn't
to,
overcook it ever.
it doesn't overcook. Well, that's the thing, because you gotta maintain that like temperature for a long period of time with the probiotics or whatever they're called, the bacteria that helps make the yogurt. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, those things are pretty nuts. They're dope. But all right, so
Yeah.
I
Welcome to
gotta
the sous
ask
vide
something.
podcast, guys.
Yeah, the sous vide podcast is pretty good, right? It tastes really great. But
Tastes great.
I've got to ask you because it was a big deal when it happened with you and whatnot. But I gotta know what the whole big deal for you, and I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times. But what was the big deal for you with seeing that whole Square Enix situation?
Oh,
With
so
Final Fantasy coming to Xbox.
I've been advocating for Final Fantasy 14 to come to Xbox for 12 years. Like it's been like, if they're, when people saw Phil Spencer that were there at FanFest, they messaged me because they were like, Brian, this is what Brian's been advocating for so long. And it's advocating for against the what would be considered the popular opinion, because a lot of people are like, no, we don't want it. It's never going to come to Xbox. Brian, you're an idiot. And, we don't want it to come to Xbox. Xbox gamers are terrible people. And yeah, yada yada yada. And I was like, no, like it's better for the game to have more people be able to play it, and it needs to come. It should come to Xbox. I think that's an important thing. And I always was like, guys, if they're ever at like a fan fest and then they get called Phil Spencer on the stage, I'm gonna cry. I'm just gonna like, it's gonna be, because that means that the game's finally, after all this time, coming to the Xbox. And that's exactly what happened. And it's like, and some people really like that and some people don't. And that's just the nature of the internet. And so for me, it was just like, the culmination of like this epic odyssey of constantly like, guys, here, because the other thing is like, you have to fight against so much misinformation constantly being touted. Hey guys, okay, the latest update, on the road to making this game able to run on the Xbox is this. Yoshi P said this is what Phil Spencer said. So I've been following this journey this whole time, reporting on it this whole time. And then essentially finally having that like fulfill it, this journey it was so satisfying. It was very cathartic. And then it was very entertaining because that went viral. That's right. I've never had, I haven't had a video yet hit 1 million views. I get around, I think I'm coming up on 800,000 for like a video, but that got 1 million views on Twitter, which was great. I was like, cool. And then a lot of people were like, a lot of people then took it into the console war, which was like, yeah, that's where it's funny, because I'm like, all right, this is actually, like, because for anybody who was like, diehard Xbox was like, oh, this guy just loves Xbox. It's like, I want all games to succeed. Cool. But this means that more games in more places. And Xbox is the only one that I hear saying that. We want to put our games everywhere. Put your games on PlayStation. Let's do it. I think they own the way that has a real future is that if PlayStation also continues to put games on the Xbox. And I think if that happens, everybody wins, because then you can be like, all right, cool. Sony's going to sell more copies, Xbox is going to sell more games. Great. That's what I want to see, because then we're going to continue to get that level of investment in these games.
Right. And I feel like the interesting thing to kind of bring up with that topic, with that being said, like, I find it funny. I see where some people, what some people mean by, oh, it's a big L if this happens. But at the same time, I'm like, who's the L for? Because people are like, currently with, the whole Blade thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it gonna, is it just Xbox exclusive, or is this coming out, for PlayStation? There's even still people out there saying, Starfield will eventually be coming out, for
I think that would be a huge one. I think what you would see. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not asking if it's a huge win or not, because I think in the terms of people being gamers, of course it's a bigger win, because then more people get the opportunity to play it. But I guess my angle on this question would be more or less like, who is like who really like actually loses in that type of situation where, Blade comes to PlayStation, and let's say the next like Horizon or something like that was on like an Xbox platform.
I don't think anybody truly loses. I think what you lose though is the strength of what the console ecosystem used to be.
Narrative.
Well, the console wars lose their narrative because they lose a point. But what you see is like, imagine if Starfield was also on PlayStation, I think you'd see a lot less hate. So there's a lot of people who are like, Starfield's crap. I was like, really? Like, I had a lot of fun with it. It's just Fallout in space. Cool. I never really liked Fallout. It wasn't my theme, but I like the space, the exploration. This is really neat. Cool. So it's like, okay, yeah, I enjoyed this game. And then people come in and be like, just hating on it because, trends and zeitgeist, people get, like their teams and like, all right, I'm going to hate on anything I see on Starfield.
It's Fallout in space, because like, I'm like, then look at my Fallout numbers, because I don't play Fallout. Like,
yeah, I've never really enjoyed Fallout. Same
I'm
here.
hoping
But
that a TV
Starfield
show
was great.
inspires me to get into it a little bit.
Now, to kind of do an aside real quick on Starfield is that I'm really glad I played Starfield before I played Star Citizen, because the travel and just what they do, like, it's like, oh, if you are going from maybe a No Man's Sky or a Star Citizen and playing Starfield, yeah, I can see the critique when it comes to traveling between the planets. It felt, it's very load screen esque, in its nature. And it's like, okay, where in, those other games, no load screens. So I was like, okay, cool. So I can see that, but I'm glad I started at that point. And I think that if they ever do a Starfield 2 or whatever, it would be really cool to see them, or who knows, maybe modders go in and just kind of change how travel and navigation ultimately works, because that could be, I think, pretty cool, pretty fun. But that's where it's like I can understand that level of critique. But all in all, fun RPG. I really like the characters, interesting story, kind of a little bit fatigued with multiverses in and of itself, but like all in all, like, it's definitely worth a playthrough. If it came to PlayStation, I think that'd be great, because then that just takes away cannon fodder for these console wars that do get a lot of attention. So the losers in this would be, consoles themselves lose more of their. They'll have to find another way to appeal to being sold, and I think that's actually a win for gamers, because if consoles were competing on their services and the price, then you as a gamer get to say, you know what, this is way more up my alley. I want to go PlayStation, or I want to go Xbox, as opposed to like, I have to buy this console to play this game. And same thing with Nintendo. I think Nintendo needs to support more devices as well. But, and whether that ends up being some kind of timed exclusive, because the developer brain in me knows that, yes, if you make a game for a platform, it is a much better and easier experience than if you're trying to make a game for all these platforms. But then I think at the end of the day, if it's a timed exclusive, okay, then maybe you just play it first on PlayStation, play it first on Xbox. I think that in and of itself would be a fine solution to the problem at hand.
All right, so before we start working on some of the burning questions before we get up out of here, I definitely got to ask you this, especially as knowing that you're as big of a Nintendo fan, you've been around Nintendo
Mhm.
um, for so long. I got to ask you, because we talked about a little bit of the strategy with PlayStation. We talked about a
Mhm.
little bit of the strategy with Xbox, and what isn't really a loss, but is looking to be a loss in some people's eyes, just for the narrative of console warring and whatnot. But I kind of want to jump off of the whole console warring band and whatnot, and kind of take a serious approach to Nintendo. And I want to ask you, how do you think, or do you think, Nintendo will ever really open up to being either like
Nintendo doesn't
mobile
need to,
friendly,
but they
or
can. Yeah,
or
I think
PC
they
friendly?
have. I think they have to, in terms of, they're not going to have their own cloud data centers. Like, it's just Nintendo. They don't do online. It's like, and it's always a battle there.
Yeah, I
I
mean, look at
think
their
that
voice
I
chat there,
think
right?
I
Yeah.
think that as consoles go, Nintendo is going to sell their games. They're going to sell their systems, because they sell the consoles at a profit, where Sony and Microsoft don't. And then, because the model has been where they make up their money on the other end, on the third party game sales, and they take that 30% cut. Like, that's how they make that difference up. But Nintendo has a mountain of cash. Microsoft could buy Nintendo. They could buy them if they wanted. They could buy them in a hostile takeover. They have Microsoft has enough, but it would be expensive. It'd be way more than what they paid for Activision. It'd probably be, I think, 130 billion. At least according to my dad. But and I could be those numbers could be different, and they could change at any time. But
Right.
I don't think they need to do it. However, I think in terms of like gaming, they run the risk of becoming such a niche product that model isn't sustainable. So Switch 2 is going to be interesting, right? But one of the things that we've seen right now is hardware. We're seeing new investment in handhelds. So you're running this on Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
running this entire show. off of a Steam Deck. Yes.
Right. And so I have a Steam Deck, I have a Logitech G Cloud, and we're seeing new investment into handhelds where these things would not exist without games being able to run on them. And the more that that becomes a reality, the more you might see other people step into it. And so the theory would be is that at some point, yeah, maybe Microsoft manufactures an Xbox, but maybe so does Sony, or maybe a Dell, or like, yeah, we're gonna make this, and we're gonna it's just it's just a device that you can choose to kind of have the hardware experience that you want, and that's what we're seeing right now within the handheld space, a space that was constantly dominated by Nintendo up until recently, and it's so great to see so many people enjoying so many games that they can play on the handheld. And so Nintendo runs the risk of being kind of, and they've been in that spot for so long. But the question ends up being is that, and timeline, I'm not saying the next 5 years, but if we're starting to talk about the 2030s, I do wonder if they embrace like cloud gaming, and if they go and have a cloud option, which they have done for some of their games to run on the Switch, they're going to have to partner with somebody, because they're not going to build out that infrastructure. They're either going to partner with Microsoft, or they're going to partner with Amazon. Maybe they partner with Google, and Google Stadia being shut down. Like that'd be a really cool technology for them to kind of just take over and say, yep, okay, here's your Switch. And if you want, you can stream your game, and then that way, like if you're at home, and then it runs it maybe in a lower fidelity, when you're not within range of the internet.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting seeing how they take advantage of the current relationship that they have with Microsoft and the deal that they just made with Call of Duty, and whatnot with that, and how they're going to kind of drive that into the future, both just how do I want to put this, the way that they want to kind of move into this, I guess hardware wise, but also just technology all around, just like even internet wise and stuff, like because we already know that like they don't have, and you said this earlier, they don't have like the best internet service, right?
Yeah.
But they're talking about bringing Call of Duty to it, which would require some sort of decent form of communication.
And when you play
going
like
to
Smash
partner
Brothers
further?
online and you're just pulling your hair out, versus like when you go and even though the game's not on right now, but like Multiverses, the netcode on that, oh man, it was awesome playing online. Street Fighter 6, I think, has that same netcode. Yeah, this is great. Okay. Smash Brothers, damn it. I was like, come on, Nintendo, please.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how consistent that they become with better hardware, a little bit further down the line thinking with using internet as something that they want to hoist up more than just within a cloud of keeping a game available to play. It'll just be interesting watching Nintendo in the next few years.
Agreed. Well,
But,
we'll probably see and hopefully learn about the Switch 2 at some point this year. Like, if they keep dragging the Switch, like that's the thing where it's like, yeah, you want Zelda at 20 frames a second, and then people are hacking that on the Steam Deck at 60. Like, come on, like let's refresh the hardware, Nintendo. But they're just doing their thing, so time will tell.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's time to go on ahead and get into them quick hitter questions, because I like to keep this show about 2 hours long, to not only for myself, but also to respect your time and also my viewers' time as well. I don't want to be here for 3-4 hours or something like that talking about all this different stuff, because we all have things to do outside of this. But getting into some of these quick hitter questions, I got to ask you, like I ask everybody else, what is a gaming genre that you refuse, don't really enjoy playing?
I don't like horror. The horror genre.
Where's the furthest in horror you'll go to? What's the last horror game that you've played that you're like, That's a horror, but didn't really
So
bother.
play the Resident Evil series. I beat 4 and I beat 5, but 5 wasn't really scary because you could play it with a friend. And when you have a friend in those games, it wasn't as scary, but I actually had a lot of fun with it. And then it was just like, yeah, I don't really want to go back to the like constantly being, freaked out and whatnot. And it just doesn't feel. And so I've seen some of the games that they've announced, it's like it just doesn't look good. I don't get, same thing we were talking about earlier, like where Fallout wasn't ever my vibe. Like, I'm not anti post apocalyptic games, but I'm like, nah, like Starfield's more hopeful. So that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I just don't play the horror games. I'll try one on occasion, but it's not anything that especially now with the younger kids as well. Those aren't games that I can play around the kids anyway. So right now it's definitely a no. But if they were ever like when they get older, if they want to try, yeah, we probably do that together as a family. That could be pretty fun.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for sure. Seeing some jump scares from the kiddos that
For
claim to
me,
be
more
so
than anything else.
tough.
Yeah.
All right. So and then kind of going on to the next question. What are the best 3 games that you played in the last 365 days? So last year. What's the
Okay.
best 3 games that you played, whether they are new or old as hell?
Super Mario Wonder, Final Fantasy 16, and Starfield. And I don't put
All new
in
games.
Star Citizen to that because they're still in alpha, but Star Citizen is definitely honorable mention. But those 3 games I've really enjoyed this year. Super Mario Wonder is my game of the year.
Wow.
It was Starfield until Super Mario Wonder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Now I need to know from you, and this is interesting for the fact that you work on games and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Do that as a hobby and work and whatnot. But I gotta know from you, what's your favorite studio and what specific game best represent that studio? And I hate to do this, but I'm just gonna go on ahead and take a shot in the dark and say Square Enix Final Fantasy.
No, I was gonna say the Coalition, and Gears.
Whoa, let's go. Wow, I didn't
Dude,
see that
I
coming, and I love when that
love
happens.
Gears. I love Gears of War. I don't classify them as a horror game, but it's like I love all the Gears. Gears 5 is so fun. And I'm curious to see what they do with Gears 6. But I think and they're also working on Perfect Dark, and I'm very interested to see what that is. I think Square Enix is struggling personally. Like I definitely understand the critiques the more I've played Final Fantasy 16. While I'm loving it because I'm a longtime fan, I think the studio and themselves has to figure themselves out. And when they launched Forspoken and closed down that studio, like, it's like, yeah. And then they kept, and this was the old CEO kept talking about NFTs, and they were like, hey, we're
Right.
gonna launch our NFT game this year in the spring, and then it's like nothing. I think I'm still in the Discord, Symbia, Genesis or whatever, So it's like, yeah, let's freaking go. So, you know,
I'm guessing you're happy to see him not at the wheel anymore.
yeah. I'm really curious what the new CEO does, and obviously, first kind of thing, he was on there with Phil Spencer, and hopefully that means that we're going to see more Final Fantasy games make their way to Xbox. Like it's just like why are Xbox doesn't like RPGs. That's not true. Like that's such a stereotype. Like Xbox, gamers really like. There's a big Final Fantasy, crowd out there. Let's go. I don't know.
I got to ask you then on since we're talking about Final Fantasy in particular, if you think that they're actually gonna have 7, the remake and this whole in the new one. I don't know why it's slipping my damn head again. Um,
Rebirth.
yeah, Rebirth. Thank you. If you think Rebirth will eventually, even 16, right, will
Mhm.
eventually find its way onto Xbox. Do you think
I
that that's
hope it does. I
actually
just
gonna
don't know
happen?
what the contracts are. I don't know what Sony is paying for that, and we know that Sony is paying for that. So
Yeah,
it all
because
depends on the contracts because what was that time frame? And they seem to keep extending it because 7 eventually came out on PC, 7 remake, and it's like, okay, so launched first on PlayStation. 16 is eventually coming to PC. I wish Square Enix would support GeForce Now more. They do now with Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, which I love Octopath Traveler. I need to finish that game and I'm going to play the sequel. But yeah, like I really, really hope that is the case. Same thing with the Pixel remasters, So Octopath Traveler 2, I think launching on Xbox this, February or something like that. And then I hope that, that gets followed up with a lot of other announcements. But right now, I don't know because it feels weird because there isn't really any talk of Sony buying Square Enix. And it just feels like, well, how much are you paying for and I feel it's hurting Square Enix. I don't think they're getting the good,
Right.
I don't think they're getting the best deal. They lost $20 billion this year in value. Like maybe
insane.
not 20, maybe it was 2 billion.
A lot of cake.
It was a B. It was either 2 or 20. I hope 2, but yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I tell you, sometimes you just got to be like, hey, man, you forget who you were. Look in the mirror.
Yeah,
You're a third-party developer. Remember that.
Remember that.
Do what third-party developers are supposed to do.
Yeah, and so I hope so. I would love. I think it would be really exciting for a lot of people. Now, it's not going to be as exciting if the game launch day and date. So what you'll tend to see is that the numbers will be less in terms of sell through because the game's been out already for so long and on so many other platforms. But It will sell. It will sell. And Microsoft, it'll be neat to see what they do launch into Game Pass as well because that is a thing that they can offer.
Absolutely. And then on to the next question, which I don't know. I thought I knew the answer to the last one, but I was completely wrong when you said Coalition. That
Dude,
threw me off a little
They're
bit.
a great studio.
They are. I mean, there's no doubt that they're a great studio. It's just I didn't see that coming at all. But yeah, on to the next question. I need to know what game or games plural are you most excited for this coming year and on? So starting at 2024 and on.
Well, Towerborn is something that's very interesting that I've seen. I want to learn more about that. Star Citizen is going to be having a huge update over the next 6 months. I can't play Dawn Trail, which is the Final Fantasy 14 expansion, until I'm officially 200 pounds, 210 or less, because that's kind of this goal that in this journey I've been on. That's one of the reasons why I stepped away and retired from being a full-time Final Fantasy content creator and just like, yeah, all right, guys, like this is killing me. But let's see here. New World this year is going to be huge for me. I'm really excited about that. The expansion I think has been really good. A lot of the features I've been waiting for are announced for February, March, April, May. And I think that's going to be really nice. And that's going to lead into an expansion into a console. Most likely is going to it's either going to be announced for console this year or it's going to launch on console this year. We'll have to wait and see. Blue Protocol, and I'm really excited about. We don't have a date on that yet. And then Throne and Liberty is going to be a real big question as to whether I really enjoy it. I've enjoyed what I've seen of it, but obviously I've gone through a lot of steps and hurdles to be able to play it. And so I'm just kind of, sometimes it lets me play it, sometimes it doesn't. So one way or the other. Outside of that, like I'm really curious about several, games like, Switch 2. Are we going to see a new 3D Mario? Like Odyssey is still one of my favorite games that I sit down and play all the time. It's like with the kids and stuff like that. And so, also I think a game that I'm really looking forward to is Dragon Quest 3 Remake. That was announced and it hasn't come out yet. Like they didn't really talk about it this year at all. And then I know we'll probably maybe learn some more about Dragon Quest 12, but I don't yet know. Like we'll see. But yeah, I hope Dragon Quest 3 Remake launches this year because I'm really looking forward to playing that again. And especially in a remake, kind of way with the 2D HD art style.
Sounds like you got a lot to look forward to, brother.
Yeah. That it's going to be a fun year. 2023 was great for gaming. You
It
know,
was.
I thought it was one of the best years that we've had in a long time.
And this is
Oh, Light No
not
Fire. I don't know why that slipped my mind. I don't know if Light No Fire launches this next year, but I'm really curious as to see what they do with that game. It looks, from everything they've already shown, I'm like, okay, let's go.
so this is a little off of the questions a little bit, and this kind of sparked up just because you said 2023 was so great in gaming,
Mhm.
right? I have two kind of like sidebar kind of questions to ask for you, for you. So like the first one is going to be, although you say it's a great year in gaming, a lot of people also throw in the fact that we've had so many leaks. We've also had
Mm,
so many devs losing their jobs
yeah, that's true.
and stuff like that. Where's your head kind of wrapped around with future of gaming? You know, and then in parentheses in the in parentheses in the equation, there's you know dev reliability, or not really reliability, but sustainability. How about
Yeah.
let's use that sustainability.
Well, no, knowing that the devs work for less and then getting laid off sucks. Like there's no celebration there, but the lesson ends up being is that you there's nothing in life is guaranteed. Like you know, you will do, like you will and can lose your job. So like I always say, like, look at this as a lesson to say to you, how do you prepare? How do you best yourself so that when these things happen to you, you're not left holding the bag? And it sucks because it feels like with record profits and more,
Right.
but business isn't like how we run our own personal finances. So I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, but then why did everybody get laid go? It's like, well, they don't have anything for them to do right now. They're not just going to keep them as a liability. And so there's a cost there and there's a risk there because then those people can go elsewhere and and you might when you're ready to need them and do that, then you might not. But ultimately, like the industry has always had a lot of turnover, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So it's like if you're thinking about getting into that, note that that's something that you're going to be stepping into, and you got to be ready to to be flexible and move and unfortunately get laid off. And it is, it's not to be celebrated, but it's to be hopeful that games in the industry continue to grow, and a lot of that is just they'll do that and then their stock price will go up. So it's a game, they're playing that game as well. Let's see here in terms of the future, like I think we're going to see a lot of new ideas. I think we're going to see a lot of experimental things, and some things are going to work and some things aren't. I'm very curious if Xbox and PlayStation decide to launch their next console with no disk drive at all, because I started thinking about like what disc videos do we watch anyway? We watch in the car. We have a disc drive there. The Xbox Series X, we'll put the disc in on occasion, but most of it is all streaming anyway. So
Yeah,
I'm very
most of
curious to
these
see.
like
I,
Netflixes and stuff like that
yeah.
are finally catching up to like what our TVs are fully capable of doing
Yeah.
now. To
Mhm.
where it's like, why the hell would I buy this? Or better yet, I bought a Series S. I can't even use a disc anyways.
Right. Well,
Might as well
my
just stream.
PlayStation is the digital edition. It doesn't have a disc option at all. So I'm like, yeah, I don't need a disc. So 1 second, I'm almost done. The but I think essentially what you're gonna see is a lot. It's I think the thing I'm expecting is a lot of people who are like, if this happens, I'm never gonna play games again, or I'm out of gaming. They're not. That's just that's them just placating to an emotion, and they're gonna play games even if they're all digital, and they'll grumble about it, or they might go and find a physical thing to kind of have throwback whatever. But the industry is gonna move, and it's bigger than any one gamer. And if anybody sticks to their words and walks away from gaming because it goes all digital, like that's somebody I would love to have as an interview on my podcast. Like, oh, you really like games? Like how do you cope? How are you managing that?
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting question.
Yeah.
That specific one piece in gaming will then ruin every possible experience that could be made in the future, right? It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But the second part of that question that I thought was very integral to you saying what you said at the beginning of it, and keep in mind we got maybe like 5 minutes left here.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Try to be short.
no, I mean, do what you want. You don't. I mean, it could be 10 minutes if you want. I just know that you had somebody knocking at your door.
Well, yeah, I got the kids. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, almost.
But so now that you said, man, like you got to know that this is happening. Kind of, you see the writing on the wall. Not everybody's going to be up. If, you get hired at one place, it doesn't mean you're going to work there until you're able to retire.
Yeah.
But one thing that we have been seeing within the industry itself is, big name to, not exactly big name, maybe a smaller name, people leaving and starting their own damn companies.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're also seeing something that people are very kind of weighing the scale, seeing if it's worth it or not. But I want your opinion on this in particular, which is AI in gaming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on ahead and shoot my opinion. And I just want to hear what you have to say about it with your opinion and everything like that attached to it. My whole thing is with it is it's like I see that people are trying to do things more on their own. You recently seen old boy from what thing was that called the people that are making Fable right now. Why am I slipping on Playground Games? You've seen Mike Brown from Playground Games leave. He started up his own company called Maverick. You've seen like the old boy that used to work on Call of Duty and Dead Space start out Ascendant Studios. You've seen Jerry Hook from the Halo days and old school Xbox Live days. Now he has his own studio called Jar of Sparks. And you're seeing all these things. You recently probably seen that the guy that left the guy that left Embracer Group and was like, screw it, you guys are falling apart right now. I'm gonna go start my own thing. You're seeing all this happen while we're also seeing a trend up in AI. My opinion to that is awesome. We're gonna be able to see more people take advantage of this insane technology and not have to deal with so many people and still deliver a dope product. What are your thoughts on all that stuff that I just
said? So you like the so many people thing is so important because bigger teams mean they're hard. Those are bigger ships, harder to steer, and so you have to like there's so much risk involved and they do whatever they can to mitigate it. So the positive that could happen with AI is that you end up having it to where games could actually be made by a smaller set of people. Light No Fire is being made by 12 people right now. Procedural as it's a form of AI, generation in that regards. And so the hope would be is that, especially in terms of the business model with subscriptions and more, like you could see, again on the optimist view, that that AI means that bigger studios have less risks, so they can actually do more interesting things. Or you can see games being made by teams of 12 to maybe 30 people, as opposed to teams of 1,000 people to make the game. And I think that that's going to give them a level of agility and experimentation that reduces the risk, and we could see new ideas, come to the surface, which could be exciting. And so I actually have a positive outlook on it. There's could be a lot of negative, right? Like I could see game testers. I don't, as a on-ramp for people wanting to get in to do game testing, but I could see that whole industry just going away because you could have, here's our AI, game testers that are testing out the game for every possible thing 24/7, 365.
It's doing its own spell check by
with every build, right? With every build that we push, it's going to test everything. So that way we catch any, we don't launch to having all these day one patches. So there could be a lot of value there, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you'll have to just kind of wait and see. But
it's a wait and see.
I'm on board with it because to me, in my opinion, it's just like everyone always says they care about indies and they care about these smaller teams and stuff like that. And to me, it's just like this is literally like, in my opinion, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but into my opinion, this is almost like a love letter to be like, hey, you really want to work on this by yourself? You just want to keep your team small? Check this out.
Oh yeah. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to answer this next question fairly quick because I
Okay.
think you could. But
I'll try.
if you were to revive 2 dead IPs, what would they be?
I would love to see. I think it was Eternal Darkness. That was it, and it was kind of
for saying that.
yeah,
I
dude.
freaking love you for saying that. Oh
Eternal
man,
Darkness, man. I was like, that was a
go.
wild
Cut
experience.
the
It wasn't
limb
so
by
scary. It wasn't
limb.
so
Let's
horror. It
go.
was just I liked the psychological thriller nature of it. So I wouldn't
You'd
classify
be
that as a
running
horror
and your
game.
limbs would just fall off one at a
The
time,
TV
and
would
then the
turn
screen would
off.
flash.
The
Yeah.
TV would, turn off, and it was just like it was so fun. So that would be one I would think that I would love to see kind of make a return. Trying to think about a second one. The Final Fantasy Tactics series. I really would love to see new Final Fantasy Tactics. And based off of what I saw with 16, it's like they could tell some really cool kick-ass stories, and so that would be the other one. Final Fantasy Tactics, bring it back, and Eternal Darkness.
Ah, man, you're the first person to bring up Eternal Darkness as the game to bring back, and I freaking love it. Just thinking of that, like with the Hellblade type of
Yeah,
fidelity in
right.
that game would be just insane.
It'd be
Like
insane, dude.
literally.
Yeah,
Like I thought I was losing my mind when I was actually playing the game because of the sanity meter.
yeah.
Right?
And then you, as the player, have the choice. Like, do you want to try to be as close to that insane as possible, so you see
Right.
like and have a different experience, or are you trying to keep that insanity meter, normal, so you can, win? I don't.
Oh man, I loved it, man. You just walk in a room, people start following you and stuff like that, man. That game was
Mhm.
so creepy, but I loved it. And it actually got me interested because I hated Resident Evil before that game, and it got me interested in Resident Evil
Okay.
again just by playing that game. I'm still not that into Resident Evil. I figured out Eternal Darkness was just the game for me.
Yeah.
All right, and then these last 2 questions, I like to smush them together.
Okay.
The first half of it is, what is your dream, or actually, excuse me, what frustrates you the most in gaming? And this could be any facet of gaming.
It's easily the whiny, entitled adult gamer that just complains. It's like in a sea of like and it's their goal seems to be like they want to have everybody feel bad about gaming like they do or something like that. And it's just like, dude, life's too short, man. Like there's a lot. If you don't like this game, go play this other game. It's like, I don't know what, I don't have a lot of free time. And so for me, I get annoyed because I'm like, oh man, you mean you get to play video games and you get to you put, because I typically see it as like, I've played this game for 5,000 hours and it sucks. It's like, you mean you got to play this game for 5,000 hours before you got tired of it? Like that's a hell of a deal. So it's that, it's kind of that
Sounds like
that's
you
a pet
liked
peeve.
it for something.
Right. There was something that kept you going. And then eventually, you woke up and you're like, oh, what am I doing with my life? So it's that the self-entitled kind of whiny gamer like mindset that can kind of bubble to the top because of social media. I just go, oh man, dude, there's so many good things out there, and I get to see it because I get to see my kids see the games. They love the Paw Patrol game that's on Game Pass. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's not a great game.
She loves those games,
but she loves it, and they're having fun. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I get to see gaming through the eyes of my kids, and it's fun to kind of show them these experiences.
No doubt. And then the last question I have, which is, because I always like to try to end it on a positive note. That's why I was like, oh crap, and caught myself and asked you the negative one first. But what would be a dream come true for you? And I'm going to make this one kind of selfish for you in this whole gaming sphere.
I'd like to get to 100,000 subs on YouTube on at least one of my channels. I think that's going to feel pretty like monumental. Because like overall, like I've got a couple channels with a lot of subscribers. Like my New World channel is coming up on 18,000. It's like absurd. PAX Day channel's growing. It's going to hit probably 1,000. Here in January. Blue Protocol's channel is going to probably hit 6,000 pretty soon. But yeah, I'd like to get Ginger Prime like over that 100,000. Not for anything else, but it's like it feels like the amount of work that I've put in, to the channel in and of itself, like it is rewarding in the responses that I get. But yeah, like having a silver play button on the wall behind me would be really, really monumental. And then obviously launching my game when we're ready to do that. I'm really hyped to share more about that in the future.
Yeah, and before those AI guys get in the way, I mean, I wouldn't be mad to play test it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like, my plan will be because like it's gonna be interesting because one of the thoughts I've had is that thankfully I met a lot of really great content creators, all various different sizes. Like, would it compromise the integrity of them if before the game was ready to release, like I had them consult on playing it and letting me know where they find fault, just so that we can decide whether we want to tackle that or not, so it's like, for example, like, not that I've reached out and asked him and I don't know what his answer would be, but like I'm friends with ACG and it's like, yeah, dude, like I love your reviews. Would you not review my game, but just review it for me? So that way I know that it's either ready to go out or if we need to just put it back in the cooker.
Yeah, private
and improve
right?
it. Right. But then the question is that with that consultation, if he does go and then review the game, is that a compromise review? Like, I don't know. So these are just thoughts that I have in my mind.
Well, you could always ask him to do like a before and after review as well, to where he, maybe prepares a video of what the game is and then, has a part 2 of what the game has went through and became.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's ideas on the table for you to play with in that aspect. It's just whether the person that you ask wants to do it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. But brother, thank you so much. And with that, we're at the end of the show. Again, thank you so much for coming here, giving me the time, and being patient with me. And I mean, I understand I had to be patient with you as well, but scheduling and being a content creator yourself, and then making plans to work with somebody else, it's not easy, right? It's not exactly an easy task. So I definitely commend you for making some time for me, coming through here.
Thanks. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I want to continue to encourage you on your hustle, and the advice that I give would be like, you make whatever content you want to make, but when I start to kind of say like, yeah, in 10 years, like if you have a backlog of, as evergreen as possible content, little videos and things like that, like your live streams are going to like be even more exciting, and so it's like, I don't, especially with kids, like, yeah, like I want to spend time with the kids, and occasionally I live stream, and that's what I say. It's like, tomorrow my wife is giving me a game day, so I'm gonna play some Star Citizen in the morning and play some Elden Ring in the afternoon. Like, yeah, so I get a game for as long as I want on a day, which is great. So she does that on occasion, but it's nice to have that on occasion, as opposed to like if I had to feel like I had to get up, hit live, play a game, every day. Like at some point, yeah, like I think the long-term viability of content creation is a VOD strategy, and then occasionally you do live, but I'm not going to tell you what to do.
No,
but I'm just going to wish you luck.
Well, it's up to a person to take the advice or leave it on the table. So, but I know for sure that's something that I really wanted to dive into. I just been, just like you said about your comedy, just like
people get analysis paralysis. I see a lot of guys. Yeah. I see a lot of guys think that like, oh, I can't really add anything to this, or I'm like, just make it anyway. Like, hey, I have a thought, I'm going to do this. Just make it anyway. And then do it again, and then do it again. And it's like, eventually it's going to become, because people are like, like I'll do most of my videos, like one take, no edit, in terms of it. Cause I can just like up, and sometimes it needs editing and other takes, but it saves me a lot of time. But then they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I've made thousands of videos. at some point, like it feels more natural.
Yeah, man, ain't nothing to it but to do it, I guess, right? Ain't
Yes,
nothing
sir.
to it but to do it.
Yes, sir.
But anyways, once again, brother Prime, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I hope this isn't the last time that I get to see you either on my channel or another
Dude,
channel
yeah.
or on yours or
I will happily
whatever.
come back, and I need to now get you on my show.
Yeah, man.
And I want to see also your setup at, with your mic and all more when you're back at home. But happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you and your family, sir. Thank you so much for I love talking games, so this is a real treat for me.
No doubt. And thank you to everybody that stuck through watching. As I said earlier, doing this off of the Steam Deck yeah, Steam Deck. So I almost said Stream Deck. But yeah, doing this off the Steam Deck. And I hope you guys got to enjoy this video as much as I got to enjoy this interview with Ginger Prime this evening here on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. Be sure to come by and check us out tomorrow for the next episode of Bull Sitting with me, Lo, Cozy Beluga, Matt Likes Games, and a guest if possible, if Loki even got one for this week. So hopefully you guys check us out then. And if you don't see us tomorrow, you guys make sure to have a fantastic rest of your year because the New Year's is coming up. And hopefully them resolutions that you made can come to fruition. But as for your boy Ham Solo, 05 Gaming here on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel, I wish you a happy New Year's and remember to keep it gaming or keep it moving. Peace out, you guys.